I have a simple test for you. Here are 3 photos of my car. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. Oh, and by the way, if you're new here, these photos are of my 2013 981 Porsche Boxster base model with a few options and mods on it. If you're interested in the Boxster, then there are a few other videos on this channel featuring this car. Now, here are 3 alternate versions of the very same photos, not with a different edit. I haven't manipulated these in Photoshop or Illustrator. They are different photos of the same subject from exactly the same positions. All right, so here's the first one. Here's the second one. And here's the third one. Did you spot the differences between each pair of images? What makes this photo different to this one? Or this one different to this one? Or this different to this? The eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed the same 2 differences in all 3 images. And in a minute, I'm going to show you what tool I used to do it and how I used it so that you can get your car photos from this to this. Before we continue though, I want to let you know that this video has a sponsor, Kentfaith, also known as K&F Concept, a camera accessories company whose products I've purchased and used for many years. I'll come back to them and how they're involved in this in a few minutes. Now, I've shot cars and motorcycles for a living on and off since I was 18 and I'm 56 now. I shot my first motorcycle magazine cover for a magazine called Trail and Track, which I read when I was a little kid. I shot that back in November 1986, which was a static shot of the then new Yamaha Tenere and the Suzuki Dakar shot in the deserts of northwestern Victoria. I shot my first car magazine cover for Car Australia in March 1990, which was a tracking shot of the 300ZX, the Supra, the MR2 and the RX-7 on the north bank of the iconic Calder Park Thunderdome. And in those nearly 40 years of photography, I've learned that really there are 3 skills that you want to master when shooting motor vehicles, especially cars. Number 1, your composition. Number 2, the perspective. And number 3, of course, the light. You can also think of these as number 1, where you actually position the car relative to the other elements that are in the scene. Number 2, which lens you use and where you place it, and the camera, of course, that it's attached to, relative to the car. And number 3, what you do with the available light, because more often than not, we have to shoot with what we have, especially when we're shooting cars or motorcycles. So what are the 2 differences in the 3 better images? I think they're better. Hopefully you do too. The 2 differences are, number 1, there are fewer reflections, and number 2, there is better color saturation. You see, a car is a huge convex mirror. It reflects everything around it, and oftentimes those reflections can ruin an image because, well, they detract from the car's lines and form. Reflections can make a car's smooth surfaces, both metal and glass, unnecessarily busy. Reflections can cause aspects of the surrounding environment, the parts of the scene that you don't want to photograph, like trees and power lines, people, buildings, other cars, whatever. Things like that are out of the shot, it can cause those to become visible in the car's panels and glassware, effectively bringing them back into the shot when you didn't want them. Of course, though, like most things in life, there are exceptions to this rule, like, for example, a pleasing sunset, or clouds reflected in a vehicle, or, a scene reflected in a still body of water, whether it's a river or a lake. But in many cases, especially with a vehicle, reflections can diminish your image because it introduces elements that you're trying not to photograph. So how do you deal with them? Well, simple really, with one of these things. A circular polarizing filter or circular polarizing linear filter, or CPL for short. A CPL is a rotating filter that goes on the front of your lens, either via the filter thread on the very front or via a magnetic adapter ring, which is screwed in, and then the filter just attaches to that magnetically. Depending on the angle of the redirected light on the surface that you're photographing, relative to your position, it can reduce or even eliminate reflections on one surface plane at a time. And that's the party trick of the CPL filter. Now, this is great for looking through water and landscape photography to see the rocks or whatever it is below the water's surface by reducing the reflections in the sky, but it's also brilliant for reducing reflections on a car so that you can clean up the glass and panel surfaces, reduce distractions, and really see the car's rich paint colours in all your images. Which leads to the second thing that you get from using a CPL filter, and that is better colour saturation, especially in blue skies or green foliage and car panels. This happens for a few reasons. One is that it's simply a byproduct of reducing the reflections on a shiny surface, meaning if you get rid of the reflections, then you can see what's through those reflections down to the colour of the surface below. The other reasons relate to how light waves work and how circular and linear polarization impact the transmission of those light waves. And I'm not going to bore you with the details because, well, A, I don't know enough about it to speak on it with any real conviction, and B, if I did, I'd probably bore the crap out of you with it anyway. Okay, so first off, a few things that you need to know about circular polarizing filters. First off, unlike many other areas of photography, where you can get quality results from cheap gear, cheap filters are going to often produce cheap results. And I know this because I've tried them. The thing is, cheap filters can add color cast to your images. They can cause or amplify problems like lens flare, distortion, or vignetting. Number two, CPL filters work best when you're positioned 90 degrees from the light source because of how the light waves work and how polarization works. Number three, CPL filters are best used on focal lengths above 24mm full frame focal length. If you use one on a lens that's much wider than that, then the polarizing effect is less even because very wide lenses have an angle of view that's greater than 90 degrees. A 24mm, for example, is about 85 degrees and a 20mm is about 95 degrees. So you want to stick to 24mm and above. Number four, a CPL will cut between half a stop and 1.5 stops of light, so it can act as a light ND filter too if you want for slowing down your shutter and shooting things like waterfalls or movement in trees, that kind of stuff. I've tested all of my KNF CPL filters on my Hasselblad and they cut exactly 1 stop of light. Okay, so now the $64 million question, how do you use a CPL filter? Well, luckily, that's the easy part. First, make sure you buy, I would say the best one that you can afford relative to what you're going to attach it to. I mean, if you're putting it on a cheap lens, you don't need to go crazy. But for my Hasselblad and my Canon gear, I use KNF's Nano X Pro Series filters, both magnetic and screw-on, depending on the lens. Second, all you do is attach the correct size filter to the front of your lens. You can usually find the filter thread size on the inside of your front lens cap. Here's a Canon one, a Sigma one, and a Hasselblad one. And you can see on the back of all of those, it shows the filter thread diameter for that lens. Okay, and the third thing you do is you simply rotate the front of the CPL filter and watch what it does to your subject. On a car, the first thing you'll notice is that depending on where you rotate the filter to on the front of the lens, reflections on one surface plane will reduce, either on the side of the car, the windshield, or the bonnet, or hood if you're in America, but it's likely that you're going to notice other things too. For example, you'll probably notice a boost in color saturation and depth on the surfaces where you've reduced the reflections, where you've rotated the filter and reflections on that surface have been reduced. You'll get a boost in color and saturation. Second, if there's any atmospheric haze in your shot, like you've got some fairly distant midground and background and there's atmospheric haze in the image, it'll reduce that. And third, you'll get a boost in the clarity and the color of the sky and the clouds, especially if it's a blue sky day. Now, for those who might think that KNF sponsorship on this video has influenced my views, I'm going to share a couple of things with you. First off, here are all the KNF filters that I've purchased with my own money. And here are all the filters that I've been given for free. Now, that should be enough for you, but let me also give you an insight into how this sponsorship played out. In a typical deal, the sponsor would give the video creator, me, some products to show to their audience. And in exchange for that, the creator gets to keep the product or they receive a fee to help with the cost of making that video. A good example is a couple of recent tripod reviews I've done where I didn't get any money, but I got to keep the tripod at the end of it. Now, sometimes it's both. Sometimes you get to keep a product and you get some money as well. My situation is a bit different though. You see, I've been buying Kentfaith products for years. That's how I've managed to accumulate so many of them. So when they asked if I'd like to do something with them, I said, yeah, sure, but you don't need to send me any free products because I've got a ton of them already and I've actually wanted to make the video that I have in mind for this for quite some time and I already have all the products I need to make that video. Matter of fact, I had literally just days before they reached out to me, I had bought another couple of top-of-the-range CPL filters for my Hasselblad X2D. The only filters of theirs that I hadn't tried that I was interested in was the CPL and variable ND combined filter for shooting video. So I did ask them for one of those to use on my Canon R6 Mark II and my 24-70 f2.8 lens. And that's the free filter that you saw a minute ago. But in addition to that, and in the interest of balance, let me share a few negatives that I found using their top-of-the-range Pro Series filters just recently. Essentially, these are 3 ways that I think their top-of-the-line brass filters could be improved. Number 1, the textured knurling would be better if it was all the way around the front section so they're easier to grip. Right now, they have 2 smooth sections on them where the serial number and the product description are printed. It all looks very nice, but what that means then is that you're presented with 2 sections around the front end of the filter that are knurled and easy to grip, and 2 sections that are smooth and aren't so easy to grip. Secondly, it would be nice if there was more aggressively textured knurling on the rear section of the filter, the bit that you grip to attach it and remove it from your lens, because that's quite slippery. And if that was more textured and sharper, it would be easier to remove it from the front of the lens. And the third one is I noticed they're fairly heavily damped when you rotate them. It would be nice if they had less damping in them. And this is why I actually love their magnetic filters, because even though they're not as beautiful as the brass screw-in type filters, they are certainly easier to attach and remove and to rotate, because you're just talking magnets, just slap them on, pull them off, easy to rotate. So that's basically it. To get your car or landscape photos to go from this to this, or this to this, then just try a high-quality CPL filter like the ones that I got from Kentfaith Concept. You'll find some links down below, plus a discount code to get 10% off them until the end of 2024. If you have any thoughts or questions, please share them in the comments section. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe if you can, and I'll see you again soon. See ya.